A wonderful GM. I just got out of the podcast with Ian Rogers, who is the Chief Experience Officer of Ledger. You cannot imagine, like, this conversation was so cool. Like, this guy was involved in the process of bringing Apple Music to the market. He was the Chief Digital Officer of LVMH for years, and he's really pushing new trends, new cultures into the mainstream before the mainstream even knows about it. And at Ledger, he really understood the future of having security, identity, and basically self-custody all combined throughout a device, which is, in that case, he showed me the Ledger Stax, for example, that you'll also see. And he has a very interesting way of looking into the future. He has a very interesting way of how people should interact with technology. And it's just amazing to listen to this guy. So I wish you all the fun that I had in our conversation with this episode of the Onchain Culture podcast. And I'm really looking forward for your feedback. Let's go to my conversation with Ian Rogers, Chief Experience Officer of Ledger. I actually want to start with one question, if I'm allowed to ask that.
Sure, of course. All questions are allowed, and the harder the question, the better.
Okay, perfect. But because I love icebreaker questions, and when I did my research, there was one thing that was actually, immediate question that came into my mind is Apple Music or Spotify?
I still use Apple Music.
I also use Apple Music.
Thank you very much, by the way. I would say, I've never been a fan of Spotify. I have a Spotify account now because, people send you things and you want to listen to them there. Obviously, I am biased. When I met my now wife, she asked me, she's like, "Why are you sending me playlists in Apple Music and not Spotify?" And my answer was, "Well, because I made it." And then she's like, "Okay, that's interesting." But so there's obviously a bias. But I do think that what we set out to do with Beats Music, with Trent Reznor as the creative director, was to make a music experience. I really felt like I used to have this thing I would talk about in the mid 2000s, because even when I was at Yahoo, I found it really interesting that all of the context about music is in the web, and then iTunes is like a spreadsheet that plays music, right? Like you can literally know nothing. If you could know everything, like if you went to some obscure Blue Note record, you could get the entire story of the recording in the internet. And on iTunes, I couldn't know who plays drums. Like absolutely devoid of information, right? And so when we built Beats Music, we really wanted to make an app for music people. I'm a music fan. Trent Reznor is an artist. Jimmy Iovine is a music legend. What we said was, look, I know that Steve Jobs liked music, but he's not a music guy the way that Jimmy is a music guy. I always, when I would do the press for Beats Music, I was begging the press to do a trivia contest, music trivia, basically like Rock and Roll Jeopardy between me and Daniel Ek. I love Daniel, by the way. He's a great guy. Daniel, shout out. I will smash you at music trivia. No question. Let's do this. But that was it. We're music nerds. And so I'm proud of what we did in that way. And that I don't think that Spotify really talked about curation until we did. I think we kind of forced them to. And actually it was when we sold Beats to Apple, Spotify bought the company that did the recommendation system for Beats. Apple didn't want to buy it. Spotify very smartly did buy it. And so you might notice, if for Spotify users out there, you'll notice there's actually a correlation between Apple buying Beats and Spotify's music recommendations getting better, because the team at Seed Interactive had built this incredible music recommendation system, and Spotify ended up buying it. And it's what, if you talk to people about what they like about Spotify, it's like, what do you call that? New Music Daily, all of that sort of stuff, the stuff that the team who built recommendations for Beats Music built. So some of the Beats Music lineage is actually in Spotify now.
I didn't know this at all.
Yeah,
Did you say
it's a weird
that
piece of trivia.
Would you say that you have a feeling of spotting trends earlier, or?
I don't know. I mean, if I'm honest, I don't know if I'm good at that. I mean, I think, look, I've always been, since I'm 13 years old, I've been a skateboarder, and I'm 52-year-old that identifies as a skateboarder today. So,
I love that. I love everything about that.
But I do think that if you're a skateboarder, here's what you're really used to. You're used to people making fun of you for what you wear, and then 5 years later they're wearing the same thing they were making fun of you for. So I think in some way, you know what I mean? Maybe it's not about spotting trends. It's about just being fearless about, not caring what people think and following your own obsessions, deeply into something that you care about without caring if other people care about it as well. I think that's something that's really familiar to me. But also, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, even all of the nonsense around, the U.S. election these days, and I think about it like I've known my whole life that no politician represents my ideals. Like I've never in my entire life felt connected to mainstream culture in any way. Not music, not fashion, not politics, not I've always been into the kind of culture you can only find in the dark alleyway. And so
nice
I don't know if I'm good at spotting trends, but I've never been in the mainstream.
That's quite interesting. But how does someone with your skills and your personality that I'm slowly getting to know now throughout the last couple of minutes, how does someone like you, who was doing a lot of things in the music industry, then in the luxury fashion industry with LMVH, all of a sudden starts to work in a crypto company? Like, where's the bridge? Where does it coming from?
Well, I think, I've always been a technologist. And maybe that goes all the way back to, my mom did, her sort of family history and found out that one of her ancestors was married to someone who came over on the Mayflower, once upon so these are crazy people and they are frontier people, right? Like, so I think somewhere in me, I want to be in the new thing that hasn't happened yet, but I have deep belief based on fundamentals that it will be there, right? I mean, in 1993, I was building digital music products, right? In 1997,
insane looking back.
Yeah, in 1997, I was the guy that was like, this internet thing's going to be big, right? So to be honest, a consumer internet of 6 billion people is not that interesting to me. Like the fun part's over already. So once you've got more than half the population, like the fun part is over. And I felt that with digital music. Digital music I loved it. I mean, it was literally my life's work. At the same time, once it was on every iPhone, it was like, okay, well, now what are we doing? Because this is done. We solved this problem. Like, hey, Siri, play the Beatles. Like, it's over. It works, So it's not like we were going to go start the next SoundCloud, right? Or the next Bandcamp. It had been, we reached that saturation point. We solved the problem, right? It used to be that you couldn't get digital music, and now you can, right? It's problem solved. I'm really happy to move into new problems. So LVMH was a great one for me because I got the opportunity to see if the things I had learned in music were applicable more broadly in culture. Also, I think, it's a really similar problem, but with physical products. And I just thought that that LVMH was in a great position. The internet fundamentally moves us from mass market to niche markets. And it also moves us from a world where marketing is hyper efficient to a world where quality is hyper efficient, because word of mouth is the way that you discover things, right? Not advertising. And so I thought, LVMH was in a perfect position to really be accelerated by the internet. But it probably doesn't look like Amazon, right? And I think that that's a super exciting challenge that I think a lot of people didn't get. Like, a lot of people would just say, like, well, why isn't Louis Vuitton on Amazon? Like, oh, no. Like, there's actually, it's why wouldn't a Louis Vuitton sales associate have a better application, to sell the right thing to a person when they're standing in front of them in a store? Like, that's a much more interesting question, to answer and problem to solve. But then my path to Ledger was much more personal, to be honest. When I moved to Paris for LVMH in 2015, two of the first people I met were Pascal Gauthier, who was the first seed investor in Ledger, and eventually president and eventually CEO. And then Tony Fadell, who was the inventor of the iPod, co-inventor of the iPhone, the founder of Nest.
What a beautiful mix of people that you've met in Paris.
Really, to be honest, I have four friends in Paris. Like, I married one of them. One of them runs Satisfy Running, which I highly recommend. Best running clothes brand on the planet. The other shout out Brice Partouche. The other two are Tony Fadell and Pascal Gauthier. Really, those are my closest friends in Paris, and so I have been really lucky to be able to work with two of them. The reason that I came to Ledger in particular, though, is it was after the ICO boom and bust that I came to Pascal and I said, Pascal, I think that Ledger's going to be gigantic. And he was like, well, me too, but why did you finally figure that out? And I said, well, because, the ICO boom showed us that there were going to be a lot of different types of cryptocurrencies, and most of them would be, would fail or worse, be scams.
Were you holding crypto before that?
I was. I started, I've been aware of Bitcoin since 2009, 2010. I bought like the Mastering Bitcoin or Programming Bitcoin O'Reilly book. I can't remember what it's called. Probably 2014, I don't know.
One of the very early adopters.
And then I didn't buy any crypto until 2015. And I actually sold my cost basis in 2017 because it smelled like .com madness to me, right? But I'm so glad I did that. It was the perfect move because at the peak of 2017, I'm like, I'm out. But I'm not out. I'm selling my cost basis because I don't know. This feels like madness to me. And I just want to be in a position to not care anymore, right?
Yeah, okay.
But what a great vantage point because now I'm able to look at it objectively. I'm not like pumping my own bag. I'm just like, what is this really? And my feeling was, okay, we will have digital ownership in our digital lives. Also, the Bitcoin narrative is tremendous. Like, maybe one of the greatest stories, probably the greatest story of my lifetime. Probably the greatest brand of my lifetime. And I love that standalone, Bitcoin is just one of the most unbelievable inventions. It's incredible that it exists the way that it has existed. And then there are so many other interesting narratives, whether it's, we now have plentiful, cheap block space that, we have that's programmable. So I think all of these dreams really have come true. Now, Ledger, I feel like is to digital ownership and security the way Cisco was to the internet, right? Cisco, there were all these wars in the 90s. We called it World War 3.0. It was, Netscape is getting killed by Internet Explorer, and there's an antitrust trial, and AOL buys Netscape, and Cisco's just sitting on the side going, we don't care who wins. We're good. Is there going to be more internet tomorrow or less internet? I think more internet. Okay, we're good. Just don't screw it up, right? Same thing for Ledger. Are we going to have more digital ownership tomorrow or less? More. Yeah. Without question. I don't even argue with people about this one. I stood up in front of a group of people, a group of CEOs at a YPO event yesterday. And I was like, honestly, like, if you want to argue with me about will there be more digital ownership in your digital life 10 years from now, I won't spend 2 seconds on this. Like it's just like I made the mistake of arguing with the person who told me they would never have an email address in 1999. I'm not going to make that mistake today. Just shut up, call me in 10 years and tell me what digital form your passport takes. Yeah. Right. Tell me that when you are paying, you're no longer using Visa rails. Right. I'm sure it won't be the form factor that we have today, just like you're not using a 14.4 modem anymore. But guess what? True. You will have digital ownership in your digital life. It's not questionable. Now, also, if not self-custody, why crypto?
Oh, I wanted to quote you on exactly this. I've read an interview, I think it was Cointelegraph or wherever it was, where you said exactly this. And I wanted to ask you, for everyone listening now or watching, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think it's important for people to think about, right? Like if you're just using another centralized, if you're a crypto person and you're just using a centralized exchange, what's the point? I mean, okay, you're gambling in the casino,
Yeah.
All right, well, you're not a revolutionary. I'm sorry. You're a gambler. I'm a revolutionary, right? And so I want to create something. The magic of crypto is it's permissionless money. I can have value and I can move value to you without needing to ask the permission of a government or a bank or my mom, or it's permissionless money, right? So if you're just using the other brand of something that operates exactly like PayPal and Wise, well, tell me what the point is. Okay, the point, by the way, go to Vegas, dude. Like, if you're participating in the world of Bitcoin, you should be using Bitcoin, right? That's how we protect the network, is by using it, right? So I think the more you learn about crypto, the more, and that's why I say, if not self-custody, why crypto? Now, look, I think as a crypto owner, there are only two sane choices. I totally understand somebody who wants to use, a Coinbase or a Kraken, et cetera. But there's only two sane choices. There's either a trusted custodian, name 5, right? That's not the world of crypto. Like, it's not like the internet, right? The internet, like, you could go to some random website on the internet. That was what was great about it. Like, oh, cool, random website. Wow. Yeah. You're not going to believe what I read about black metal last night on like something.nl/Thor, right? That was what was amazing about the internet. Random website. You can't put your digital value at a random website, right? So trusted custodians are the only option. Or self-custody, secure self-custody. Insecure self-custody, like a software wallet or a subpar hardware wallet, also not an option. Why would you have less secure self-custody? Really think about it. I mean, honestly, that means that to store your crypto, you probably have, and it depends on how generous you're being, fewer than 10 choices, probably fewer than 5. Because name 5 trusted custodians, I can't do it. I can't name 5 that I trust personally. And then you have Ledger. I don't trust another hardware wallet either, right? So to actually store your crypto, you probably have maximum 5 options.
I have like 2 questions in between that. The first one is, what I'm like, my sister wants to invest in crypto, any crypto token, coin whatsoever, and the moment I try to explain to her that she has to take care of her privacy herself, basically, she has to create a non-custodial wallet. And then I explained to her the reason. She's like, oh, damn, that's so complicated. Why should I do this when my money could be safe, or I don't have to bother when I just do it via Coinbase, Bitpanda, whatsoever? Would she belong to the gambling person category that you've mentioned then? Or how do you convince then these people?
I'd put her then in the trusted custodian category, right? Because I think there will be many people. I mean, our mission is to try to improve the ease of use without ever compromising on security or self-custody. Self-custody is important to us. I think at the same time, in a Bitcoin ETF, if you think about it from the ease of use factor, man, what an incredible user interface, right? You call your broker and you say, I want to buy some Bitcoin, and they buy some Bitcoin for you. So I'm really glad that exists. I think there's definitely a whole class of people for whom, they might be just learning about. I mean, I have a friend who's he's a rock star, and I've been trying to get him to buy Bitcoin for years. This summer, he finally did. How did he do it? He called his broker and asked him to buy,
it's the convenience part as well.
The ETF. That's great. You know what I mean? He's not spending the time with the technology the way that I am. He's beginning to believe in the narrative, and I know that slope is very slippery, right? So I'm super happy that he has the option of, and also, by the way, I think there's a real advantage for all of us for him having Bitcoin in his portfolio next to his Apple and Tesla stock. It's actually a great place, for it to be. I think for other people, there is certainly, and look, trading has a place, don't get me wrong. People trade with Ledger. I think, my point is not don't trade. My point is there's a lot more value to this than simply speculation, right? That's that's really the point that that I wanted to make. And so I think, if you're using a custodian that you trust, I trust, Coinbase, I trust Kraken, I trust CoinHouse in France. I know the owners. And so I think that's a great solution, and that's fine. I think that also somewhere along that journey, people will come into self-custody. And I also think that the future is quite heterogeneous, right? It's not all custody or all self-custody. I'm sure that much like what's in your pocket, it's a mixture, right? How many, I always ask people, how many bank accounts do you have in your family? And the answer is like, I don't know, a lot. Like, how many credit cards do you have? Well, I've got a credit card and I've got a debit card and I've got, they have different limits, exactly. Of course. And in your pocket, you also have some cash, and I've got some metro tickets, and, so I have this mixture of custody and self-custody. I have a mixture of limits and what I can do with them. I have different bank accounts for different things. There's a, checking account, a savings account, a brokerage account, an account for my kids' college savings. That's normal. That's the way we live life. And we'll have the same thing with crypto, where, you might have a small amount of value in a self-custodial wallet, and you'll have, other things or governance on that self-custodial wallet that you'll need a hardware wallet for. You might have, some digital art in one wallet. You might have the college fund.
Do you also structure your funds like this?
I do. I have a Mint wallet. I mean, this is actually my Mint wallet. This is ENCR. This is ENCR.eth, as you can see here. This is my Mint wallet.
These are your personal wallets. It was not just.
These are actually demos. All the others are demos.
Yeah. Okay.
That one's my Mint wallet. The others are demos. I like to carry more than one of the Stax because it's quite satisfying to. That's a flex.
Is this a photo of yourself?
It's not. That's actually a piece of AI art by Rupert Reinstow.
I saw it somewhere on a website.
Yeah, it's my profile picture, and people think it's me. But
I love that.
But it's actually AI art by Rupert. Yeah, and these are, you can log into them if you'd like. The pin code on these demo ones is 5555, so you can see how it works. This is the Flex, which has the glass screen, and then these are the Ledger Stacks that are designed by Tony Fadell with the screen that wraps around the.
I love that.
Around the edge. Cool. But yeah, so I think our goal is to bring that ease of use, and for your sister to come back to your sister. I do think it is, and I think what we've achieved with these devices is you can walk into Media Mart, buy a Ledger Flex, go home, buy your first Bitcoin using Ledger Live. You can back up your recovery phrase with Ledger Recover. It is a very mainstream experience, and you are quite protected. In other words, you have self-custody, so you're not going to get FTX'd or SVB'd, right? No one can take your value. When FTX went down, Ledger users were not nervous, right? And that's important to remember. Also, you have the security of the secure element. Again, this is my Mint wallet. I carry it around with me if I'm not worried about leaving it in my hotel room. No one's going to get into that. With other hardware wallets, if you bring them into the lab at Ledger, I can hit them with a laser and get the funds out of it, right? They don't have the security that Ledger does. But also you do have, if you take advantage of Ledger Recover, you can feel comfortable with, the custody of your own kind of recovery phrase. You have a backup of that. And you have access to all the services: buy, swap, stake for earning yield, credit card, the Ledger credit card, so you can spend. So we really are getting to that place. I mean, the Super Bowl ad that I will make one day is, hi.
I will make one day. Nice.
My name is Damien. I'm 21 years old. I live in Baltimore, and I don't have a bank account. And my mom says if she had Ledger, she never would have had a bank account, because you can do everything you need to right here, and and it is permissionless money. I don't have to ask permission. My bank charges me on a monthly basis, and man, there's nothing that they're doing that ultimately I won't be able to do with my Ledger.
Who are the people who use Ledger or who have a Ledger?
I think it's like asking who uses Google, right? The answer is everyone who uses the internet. It's the same for Ledger because we have, we have about 20% of all the world's, digital value. And we've only sold 7 million devices. So we've sold probably 7 million ledgers to around 5 million people, yet it's 20% of all the value, right? True. So it's definitely the people who are serious about crypto. And I think that's because the way that you become a Ledger customer is education. You get some value, you get more educated, you become, more interested in self-custody, you become more secure, concerned about security. And if you do your research, you buy a Ledger. Really, if you understand the importance of self-custody, and then, you're looking for secure self-custody, there isn't anything with the level of security that Ledger has. The challenge for us is, of course, like, how do we shorten that journey? If you just bought Bitcoin in the ETF, you're not very close to being a Ledger customer yet. You know what I mean? So how do I educate you and get you to care about self-custody and security and really see that you have the full range of features in a Ledger device. So I think it is, it's definitely, it's people that are, more inclined, to do that research and to want to be, to kind of want to go all the way.
What is your exact role actually at Ledger? Like CXO, Chief Experience Officer, what do you have to do with coming up with products like these?
It's a great question. When Pascal gave me the title Chief Experience Officer, his intention was that we need to build an experience, right? Where when you buy an Apple phone, you're not buying a piece of hardware, really. You are, of course, but you're buying into an ecosystem, right? You're buying blue bubbles and not green bubbles.
I love the reference to Apple, though.
When
people would ask me how I would describe Ledger, I would also say it's like the Apple of crypto wallets.
Thank you. We would like to be there. I think that these new devices, from an industrial design perspective, they're 2 years ahead of anyone else in the space from a pure industrial design perspective. And I think that overall, the ease of use in crypto has a long way to go, though, before we're Apple. Right, connecting to a wallet connected app can be a real pain in the ass, and that's something that collectively we have to solve. Also, if I'm connecting to an app like that and then I'm blind signing, our security model can't be YOLO, right? Collectively, that won't work, and we won't bring new people into the space if that's the way we operate. So I think we're there from an industrial design perspective, and now we have to climb the hill on the operating system, the software, et cetera. And that's exactly what we're working on. So that was really my job, to come in. So I came in, I started looking after the consumer business. Now we've expanded that. We have an amazing head of product, Guillaume Matthias. We have an amazing head of transactions and services with Jean-Francois, who you meet today. And so, I don't have, everything in the consumer business, but I look after hardware. So the hardware products that you see today, the supply chain behind that hardware. So we have, we make these products with, Foxconn, and we make them in our own factory in Vierzon, France. And then we have a distribution network, Ledger.com, MediaMart here in Germany, Best Buy in the US, Virgin Mega in the Middle East, great retailer, and Boulanger in France. We have Australia. We have distributors in Nigeria and India. We're in Amazon in 8 territories around the world. So I look after all of that with the retail team. And then also a lot of the brand and marketing side of it as well.
What is the initial goal of Ledger? Like, where do you want to be at some point?
So I think, our goal in crypto is bringing ease of use to all the things you want to do in crypto without ever compromising on security or self-custody. What makes Ledger very unique, though, is that these devices have in them what's technology called smart card. Smart card's been around since the 70s. It's the same secure chip that's in your passport, your credit card, et cetera. Yeah. But where the passport, the chip in your passport protects the secrets of the government, the chip in your credit card protects the secrets of the bank. Ledger protects your secrets, right? So that's very useful when it comes to crypto, but also it's useful even just protecting your logins. So now we have an application on here called Security Key. And, when I logged into my Kraken account this morning, I needed my Ledger to finish my login because my 2FA, my passkey, is my Ledger. mean, that, crypto is hundreds of millions of users. There are, 6 billion people on the planet who have a login problem, right? So, supporting people with their security needs, whatever the application. Also, we have the only open development environment on top of a secure element or a smart card on the planet. So developers.ledger.com, you could build an enterprise app to make your enterprise more secure. This device could easily make, a messaging app like Signal both more secure and more private, right? By encrypting your messages using your private key that's stored here, displaying your messages on a secure screen, using your private key as your login instead of your phone number, right? Like these are sort of broad-ranging, security challenges. So, crypto remains a core focus for us. Again, bringing ease of use to everything you want to do in crypto without compromising on security and self-custody. That's what we wake up to do every day. Yeah. But we have this open platform, so adding an application like Security Key can add a whole new group of users. You could imagine, an enterprise saying, hey, phones are not secure enough for our enterprise, which, by the way, is factual. So we want to give all of our employees a Ledger Flex. And the way that we secure, access to our systems in our company is through Ledger. This is an open platform. You could develop that today without even calling us.
It sounds actually like there's so much more potential than just securing your crypto, basically. This is how I got in touch with Ledger for the first time. It was like, hey, you want to buy crypto? Rather choose something that is more safe than a MetaMask wallet. So you choose a Ledger. But what I hear from you is something that goes way beyond that, like really securing your identity and having something in your pocket that can connect you securely with the crypto world or the internet or whatsoever.
Yeah, the vision for us is, again, I look at these things in very fundamental ways. Like the internet was a very simple invention. Two computers can talk to each other, right? And that brought us, then on top of that was built many things, from FTP to Gopher to the World Wide Web to ultimately iPhone and Android and the and kind of the App Store environment that we live in now. But the main thing is just two computers talking to each other, right? My phone can talk to the servers of Uber, therefore I can order a car, and there's obviously like a huge network of software built on top of that. That's what Mark Andreessen meant when he said software is eating the world, because we have these hardware platforms that have brought us a connected computer app stack, and now developers are going to just create a myriad of apps that will change our lives on top of that. We have, really, if you look at, what are the best two performing assets of the last 10 years? Bitcoin and NVIDIA, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So there's two narratives, right? There's AI and there's digital ownership. So, we will have, you actually need, if AI, you need digital proof, right? Because AI is effectively, about digital abundance, or delivers digital abundance, and blockchains deliver digital scarcity in a decentralized, permissionless way. You need that, right? How can I need to, in the future, you are going to need to prove that you are a human. You are going to need to prove that you're an individual human, right? Not just a human, but this human. We're going to need to prove that the voice that you're hearing is the one that came out of my mouth, and it was not altered by AI somewhere in the chain. And to do that, we'll need digital signatures and proof of authenticity. So really, we can't have an AI world. I'll take it even further. Like agentic AI without the user owning their preferences makes zero sense. Let me convince you of this in a second. Remember at the beginning of the year at CES, we had the Rabbit R1, was kind of the hot device. It was this little device designed by teenage engineering, and you could talk to it, and it was going to go like book you a plane ticket. Like, hey, Rabbit, book me a plane ticket.
Yeah.
It was celebrated and then panned. Same with the company Human. They made the little Humane. They made the little lapel.
I know.
Ex-Apple guys.
Yeah.
I think, look, we know enough about the web that we can imagine what's involved if I'm going to tell an agent, book me a flight to Miami, right? Okay, it needs to know my credit card. It's got to have all of my airline logins. I mean, we've just taken the security nightmare that we have on the internet, and we've expanded it to say, oh, I'm going to give this AI agent all of my private data so that it can do things on my behalf. I don't think that's going to work, first of all, because it's going to be scraping Web 2, not really the right approach. Also, it's a privacy nightmare, right? It's a data and privacy nightmare.
You don't believe in the future of AI agents doing things for you?
No, I think they will, and I think that application gets infinitely easier in the world of digital ownership, right? Because if instead of my personal data and preferences being stored in thousands of sites across the internet, which is where it is today, if instead of that, I am the owner of my preferences and I can federate them securely to applications or agents as I need to, then I can say, hey, Rabbit, book me a plane ticket. And it says, okay, I've found some options, oh, I'll choose this Delta flight. Great. Would you like to give me your Delta login? Here, now you're not giving it the login, you're authenticating and proving you are that Delta user, and you are, federating that data temporarily to the agent, right? And then it says, okay, are you okay to pay? Yes, I am. Well, guess who has my ability to pay? I do, right? And I can authorize that transaction on a secure screen. Right. So I think these things are completely interactive. I actually think that, without digital currency, without digital proof of identity, without wallet connected apps and logins, I think that the path to agentic AI is hard at best, right? Like scraping Web 2, not a great technical approach. Giving an agent all of your logins and personal information, not a good approach. It's one of these, crypto fixes this.
Interesting. Okay. I haven't really thought about this, but now with all the hypes and trends going around AI agents all of a sudden like doing things for you in terms of crypto trading or being the solution of, because this is the example that I heard, is that you might have AI agents and they cannot use your bank accounts because they're not KYC'd, so they cannot have their own bank accounts, and they would rather choose crypto. And now you all of a sudden have a new narrative where AI and crypto comes together. In combination with what you just told me, I think I've never really thought about this, and now it makes
the way I can
sense.
Imagine, I can completely imagine it actually working, right? Where you say exactly as I said, you say to that AI agent, hey, book me a flight to Miami. Here's my parameters, right? And it can go and present you with options. And then, it also is very capable of saying like, oh, it could ask you, do you have points with airline, right? It could even know that you do, but you need to give access to that Delta account.
Yeah.
Right. And then when it's time to pay, you need to look at the transaction, make sure it's exactly what you want, and then approve. Right. That's the way it's going to work. It's not going to be the case that like I give the agent my credit card. Like that works until it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare for credit card companies. Like the fraud on that will be at scale.
Yeah.
Right. And it barely works to pay with a credit card today. Like, I dream of the day, maybe someday. I've lived in France for 9 years now. I don't know how many flights to the U.S. I've booked because I go to visit my family 10 times a year.
Very good.
I've never once booked a plane ticket without needing to call my credit card company to ask them to approve the transaction. Right?
Really?
Yeah. You're booking a plane if you are using an American card from France to book a plane ticket on an American site, guess what? You call the fraud department, right? So
okay, I understand now. Okay.
These are not solved problems even today.
Yeah. Looking into the end of this discussion, I have one last question. When do you assume everyone, like similar to right now, probably everyone here has a credit card in their pockets. Like it's a usual thing. People have credit cards. They have different cards for anything. When do you think everyone will have something like this, like a Ledger, Stax, or whatever, in their pockets using that?
I think it's probably analogous to an iPod, right? I think that these devices.
So many Apple references here.
Well, these devices are. I've talked to Tony a lot about this, right? Because Tony invented the iPod, and I've come from digital music, so when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So it's worth asking the question, like, are we does this analogy actually work, or is it just familiar to us? But I think Tony would say no, the analogy absolutely works, because you have a new way of doing things, right? And you have a device that gives you a new way of doing things. I think what Tony would say is, like, look, these are the first devices. Stax and Flex are the first ones where you could really say, that it's an iPod. There were a lot of digital music players before the iPod, and we don't remember any of them, right? And so I think wallets before Flex and Stax will be the same thing from a mainstream consumer perspective. I can name a bunch of the digital media players before the iPod, because that was my domain. So I think if you were, it's just like Winamp, right? When I mention Winamp, there's only two responses: either glazed look, I have no idea what you're talking about, and like, oh my God, Winamp, right? I think 20 years from now, that'll be MetaMask. Right? You say MetaMask, and there'll only be two responses. One, what are you talking about? Two, oh my God, that was my shit in 21. Right? Like, those will be it'll be just like, and that's something to be proud of, by the way. To my friends at MetaMask, it'd be like, I just went for a run with Justin from Winamp last weekend ago. We were talking a bit about the Winamp nostalgia. It's a beautiful thing. But I think with these devices, you do have, something which, as I said, your sister could go to Media Mart, buy, take home, buy her first Bitcoin, and feel good in the process. So, but the reality is that if you look at the numbers, I encourage people to look it up, because it's I promise you, it's different from your memory. The iPod was not an overnight success. It took 3 years to really hit big numbers, and even then,
from the very first iPod to the iPod Touch or whatever, iPod Shuffle maybe.
Yeah, before it was really mainstream. You need it's concentric circles. You need those first early adopters, to come in and to adopt, and then they tell people, and then they tell people, and they tell people, and that's where we are. Right now with these devices, very few people have actually seen them. When they see them, they want them, right? But that it just doesn't happen overnight. It's not how human beings work. I always like the quote from, Steve Berman at Interscope. He's talking about Billie Eilish. He said, we've got this little overnight sensation we've been working on for 3 years, right? Which I think is about right. I think, 3 years from now, it might feel like, everybody has a Ledger Flex or a Ledger Stax, and it'll feel like it happened overnight, and it won't. It'll be because of this conversation you and I are having right now, and literally thousands of other conversations that that lead up to that moment. And when I go to a conference, I stand at a table and I say, have you seen the new ledgers? And one person at a time, right?
You have to show it to people. You have to hold it in your hand. I've also never had these in my hands before, and now for me it's a whole other level of having these USB stick type of thing, and having this, I can definitely see something like this going towards mainstream easier.
Completely. And we went this morning, and did store visits here in Berlin. They don't even have these devices in the stores yet, right? They're still selling Nano X and Nano X in those stores. They had a couple of Flex at Media Mart, right? So you can buy them, So we have work to do to get, there's distribution. You tell people. Also, though, I think that, the iPod was amazing. It was still not the iPhone, right? In any industrial transformation, you have an unbundling and a rebundling. We unbundled the compact disc into 99-cent downloads, and we rebundled it into Spotify and Apple Music, right? It's the same thing here. This is the unbundling. You'll have your phone is incapable of being secure, right? Yeah. And so therefore, you will have a device to enhance the security of the things that you do, whether it's your digital ownership or your logins or your communications or your photos, for things where you care about security, enterprise. I think that 20 years from now, we'll be like, can you believe that my daughter used to play games on the same phone where I kept all of my business data? That will seem absurd someday. But also over time, this technology and this operating system more specifically can and will be part of your phone. Yeah. Right. Whether that's a Ledger phone or, a Samsung phone that includes Ledger or something else. And also, I think that as I feel like what we're seeing right now, whether you're looking at ChatGPT, kind of in voice mode, or again, like things like Humane and Rabbit, they weren't ready for market yet. But do we ultimately? Is the form factor, a screen in front of us, or is a form factor something that's in a pair of glasses and we can talk to it? Well. I don't think you're going to be walking. I think 20 years from now, you're not going to be walking around with your phone playing Pokemon Go. You know what I mean? It will be in probably your contact lenses, right? So but no matter what, you will have digital ownership. You will have some mix of custody and self-custody. The security on the custodian will be paramount, and Ledger Enterprise is the number one. Most secure. It's the only self-custody tool for enterprises. You'll have some custody on yourself, whether that's the money that's in your walking around wallet, or self-custody wallet like Ledger, or the way your art is stored, or the way that you do DeFi type of applications that really require self-custody. There's a whole bunch of reasons that you will need security with you. Yeah. And so, the architecture, the platform, the operating system, the applications, this is just the beginning, and they have a super long life.
Has someone ever told you that whenever you speak, you have something that is like really passionate and it inspires people? Have someone ever told you this? Because this is how I feel right now after our discussion. I was like, I definitely want to get something like this, and I can see a future with Ledger now. Like, it makes sense from all the discussion and all the things that you've been explaining in the past 45 minutes.
I really appreciate it. I appreciate it. I've been really lucky. I've been able to do things that I'm passionate about. I mean, I guess I'm that kind of person for whatever reason. Like, even if it was, if you were talking to me at 15 years old, I'd probably be trying to convince you about some band or some skateboarding thing or something. So I think I've always been that guy. But I've been really lucky to be able to work with things that I care a lot about. I started working with computers when I was 8 years old. I studied computer science. I love music, and I was able to do that. The fact that I've been able to do it a couple more times is maybe what's more surprising to me. I thought maybe I was like kind of stuck in the music business. I loved working with LVMH. I was passionate about that as well, because I was passionate about this transformative mission.
And I think that's what it is.
And like moving culture had to move somewhere, and we had an opportunity to be more in tune with where people are, right? Mm-hmm. Like, people aren't picking up the phone and calling a store. They're going online and they want to feel things, right? Yeah. But I think with this, I think it's maybe that's why, I made the comments I made earlier about gambling. It's like, this is so much more. There's so much more. I do think that there will be a massive, transfer of wealth, because of this. I mean, sort of like there was with the internet. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have had the life that I've had I not studied computer science and been there for the .com boom. And I think there's something very similar here, where you have whether it's AI or blockchain, you have new technologies that will be, by 2035, it'll be a part of our lives and we won't think about it. Yeah. So the question is, like, what's the road between here and there? And that's the fun part for me. It's like I said, like, a consumer internet of 6 billion people, no thanks. But when we're here and we've only sold 7 million of these, and there are 500 million people in crypto, and all 500 million of them need this product, and they just don't, have it or know it, or maybe it's not good enough yet. Like, that's the fun part. Building that is the fun part. And then as that 500 becomes a billion, the opportunity just grows. So anyway, I really appreciate you saying it. Thank you. Then I'm doing my job. I'm in the right place. Yeah,
definitely. Like, thank you very much, Ian. This was a very, very, really cool, it was really cool listening to what you have to say. And I think the audience will appreciate that as well. Thank you for the time. Thank you for showing us the new Ledger products. And I'll be there anyways later tonight at the event.
Perfect. Let's have fun.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good to see you.
A wonderful GM. I just got out of the podcast with Ian Rogers, who is the Chief Experience Officer of Ledger. You cannot imagine, like, this conversation was so cool. Like, this guy was involved in the process of bringing Apple Music to the market. He was the Chief Digital Officer of LVMH for years, and he's really pushing new trends, new cultures into the mainstream before the mainstream even knows about it. And at Ledger, he really understood the future of having security, identity, and basically self-custody all combined throughout a device, which is, in that case, he showed me the Ledger Stax, for example, that you'll also see. And he has a very interesting way of looking into the future. He has a very interesting way of how people should interact with technology. And it's just amazing to listen to this guy. So I wish you all the fun that I had in our conversation with this episode of the Onchain Culture podcast. And I'm really looking forward for your feedback. Let's go to my conversation with Ian Rogers, Chief Experience Officer of Ledger.